Rune Factory 4 released on the 3DS back in 2012 in Japan and over the following couple of years in other regions. It was actually a game I always wanted to pick up but decided against due to it not receiving a physical release back then in Europe. Well, a remastered version is about to hit the Switch with a physical release no less. Is it worth picking up these days? I'm Glenn for SwitchUp, thank you to Marvelous Europe for the review code, and now let's find out. Rune Factory 4 Special's story sees you initially travelling on an airship toward the town of Selphia. Trouble breaks out on the way, and after exiting the ship in a most unconventional way, you end up with a case of amnesia and being mistaken for a prince. You inherit a host of royal duties, many of which we'll cover later, but one of them is to till the lands, and thus your farming adventure begins. The first 40 minutes or so are quite text heavy, with a lot of the basics being explained to you, but after this you are left pretty much to your own devices. In many respects, the story that plays out is in your hands. Whilst there is a story to follow, the life you choose to lead and the relationships you nurture are dependent on your actions. You can be a workaholic who has no time for locals, or you can get involved in a variety of fairs and events, increasing the tourist trade while you're at it. You might even take that relationship a notch higher with someone, becoming romantically involved and eventually marrying them. I must say I was quite on for wooing Nancy the nurse until she nonchalantly mentioned she had a husband, leaving me having to get a hot bath in the Bell Hotel to console myself before going home to bed alone. In all seriousness though, what makes this work is the quality of the writing that brings everything alive. Each character feels different, meaning that the one whose heart you attempt to win will have received such attention because you enjoyed speaking to them. Some lines are repeated early on before you build more of a relationship with that person, but on the whole, the humour, the subtle innuendo and the charm are in high order. In terms of the gameplay then, if you haven't played a Rune Factory game before, it can perhaps best be described as a mix between a farm life sim, being a spin-off of the old Harvest Moon, now Story of Season games of course, and an old school action RPG in some respects, such as Secret of Mana. Looking at the farm side first then, you wake up at 6 AM every day with each in-game minute being one real life second. Your farm will need to be tended to, and basic tools such as a hoe and a watering can can be acquired very early on. A huge part of your early game experience will be growing crops, with turnips being the early order of the day. Once the ground has been tilled, these can then be sown and then watered, and within a few in-game days they would have grown big enough to be harvested and can then be sold for money to buy more crops or kept for activities such as cooking a little further into the game. You have two bars, one being your traditional health bar and one being your rune bar. Every action you partake in, such as tilling the ground, watering the crops, or smashing stones, will deplete your rune bar. This will refill naturally again over time, as well as there being other ways that you can refill it. However, if you do exceed this bar, then you will begin to lose health instead, so you need to ensure that your character doesn't overdo it. I got caught out a bit by this early on, just forgetting to check it basically, especially when fishing. Carrying out any action increases your affinity towards that action, and you will constantly be levelling up skills such as walking, throwing or fishing. Levelling up in each of these areas will make you more competent and reduce the amount of rune points they consume. Items are accessed by pressing the L button, and from here you are presented with a number of different bars that categorise your items, so you can select the toolbar for example, and then the tool you wish to use. This works pretty well, and it's always easy to get to something rather than having to constantly go into a backpack or flick through copious menu screens. Being able to assign favourites to a button or cycling through with shoulder buttons as well may have been useful, but the system in place works well to be fair. I mentioned some of the roles as prints earlier, and we're going to look at two of these here as they are linked together. These are the requests and the orders. Requests will be made by your subjects via the request box, and you can check this and accept a request at any time. This will be written in your request log, accessed by pressing the minus button. Early on, the request system basically acts as a tutorial, introducing you to new features such as chopping wood, sending out shipments or fishing, but they do move away from this fairly soon and become more interesting and involved. Completing a request will earn you a reward that will open more of the game up, such as a new variety of seeds becoming available at the local shop, but they will also earn you prince points. Prince points are a visual representation of the trust that your subjects have in you owing to your deeds thus far, and this leads into orders. Orders are decrees that will shape the future of the town. Again, early orders serve more to advance the gameplay, such as enlarging the size of your backpack, but again, they do become more involved further on. You can arrange festivals or send for new traders to enter the town. Each action will use up some of the aforementioned prince points that you gained by fulfilling requests. But it isn't all about farming, as you can go out into the wild to carry out a number of other duties, such as mining to gather ore, or you can of course attempt to battle and tame the beasts that are running amok. Battle is a fairly simple affair with you attacking by pressing B, and you will be able to learn new moves as you level up your character. So yes, as well as leveling up individual skills, you also level your character as a whole too. New weapons can be obtained or forged with the materials you find, and you can upgrade equipment in a similar way. New clothing can also be acquired that will boost your stats further. As well as smaller creatures, there are also dungeons to explore and boss battles to partake in, and it's the battling part of the game that really progresses the story along. You will gain certain runes and magic powers as you play, which can be used to assist you in these battles. Battling the monsters though can serve another purpose, as one of the aforementioned orders is to build a monster barn, and any monsters you then tame will be sent to live here. They can be groomed and friendship levels raised with them. Your map is in the lower corner of the screen and can be enlarged at any time by pressing ZL. It's perfectly serviceable, although it does become transparent at times as you move, which makes it a little difficult to see, and I'm assuming it had the bottom screen to itself back on the 3DS. It's never a huge issue though, and you won't really find yourself getting lost. It would have been nice though for them to include some sort of index of characters that included a picture of them. There is an indicator of your current relationship level with each character, plus a small bio on them, but in the early game, when a request for example needs to be completed by delivering an item to somebody, it just would have been useful to have a pictorial reference to remember who they were. For this remastered version, there are a couple of new game modes. The first is the Newlywed mode, which allows you to explore the story in more detail after you have married one of the town folk, and there is also a new Hell difficulty level that you can choose early on as you are about to embark out of the castle walls for the first time. Gameplay is incredibly compelling, whether you are maintaining your farm, charming the locals or battling within the dungeons, and scores 18 out of 20. Controls work well, with items always accessible, and they score 17 out of 20. In terms of the visuals, Rune Factory 4 Special is a difficult one to gauge at times. Some parts of it look truly beautiful. The town in particular, with its blossom trees and tulips, is awash with colour and looks genuinely charming. The art style with regard to the backgrounds has a watercolour aesthetic about it, and when it works very well. However, other parts look a little drab and washed out, with some background items looking a bit blurry, which is quite jarring. It would have been nice to see a bit more movement in the background too. As charming as the watercolour backgrounds are, they are relatively static for the most part, which does make it feel as if the characters are walking atop a painting rather than being in a living and breathing world. The cherry blossom that falls on your farm during spring, for example, looks like it's on a plane in front of the scene rather than being a part of the environment. The 3D character models didn't really grab me as much as some of the backgrounds, with them again being perfectly serviceable, but with some of their animations just looking a little bit off at times. They do show their age a little bit in all honesty. Finally, there are animated cutscenes spliced in at certain times, and these do look really good, and as far as I understand, some of these are new to this version of the game, as is the opening cutscene, and the game is now displayed of course in high definition. Audio wise, the music is calm and relaxing, if a little repetitive at times during the main town part, and becomes a bit more swashbuckling and adventurous when you venture out into the wilds. Visuals can look lovely at times and a little underwhelming at others, and they score 15 out of 20. Audio sets the mood well, be it whimsical or fantastical, and gets 16 out of 20. Rune Factory 4 Special costs £32.99, €39.99 or $39.99, and for this price you are getting a sizable adventure with an addictive gameplay loop that could last well over 100 hours if it grabs you. It also includes an achievement system of sorts, with you earning trophies for each milestone you reach, such as catching a particular fish for the first time, and these are viewable in the basement of the castle. I do really appreciate when games add little personal touches in such as this. You could argue that a hard mode and a few new cutscenes is not a great amount of new content for an 8-year-old game, and that is a fair point, plus Rune Factory 5 is in development too. There is a physical version available this time as I've mentioned, and I've seen it on pre-order for around £28, so it may be worth looking down this route instead. Value scores 18 out of 20. To conclude, Rune Factory 4 Special is a fantastic mixture of farm life sim and RPG adventure. It has a warmth and a charm that makes it a joy to play, mainly down to its likeable characters and good writing, but it also gets that compelling gameplay loop just right and rewards progress enough to want you to get a bit further each time, even if your definition of getting further is catching a bigger mackerel than ever before rather than beating the next boss. Minimal new features and a relatively high price for an 8-year-old game, plus visuals that are quite inconsistent at times, are points to ponder, but this is a great time. Rune Factory 4 Special gets a SwitchUp score of 84%. Thank you as always everybody for watching. I hope you enjoyed this review. Please do remember to leave a like if you did. A quick thank you to our Patreons as always for your continued support. If you would like to join them, the links will be down in the description. And to each and every one of you for watching our videos. Take care, and until next time, happy gaming.
Ha!